All right. Lawton and Cates folks are out here today. Jim Olson and Dixon Gahnz with us. They have been involved in a case that I think kind of corresponds with what's happening with the issue with the state workers. And this all has to do with workers' rights. And Jim, you're going to have to get real close to that microphone so people can hear you. Tell us a little bit about this case with CUNA Mutual.
Okay, this is, of course, a private employer,
right,
rather than a public employer. But a few years ago, right near the end of the year, CUNA Mutual told their retirees, people who had retired, that they weren't going to be funding their health insurance anymore. And up until then, they'd had an agreement with CUNA Mutual that basically the retirees would get at least 60% of their health insurance paid for, 40 to 60%, plus they could convert their sick leave into payment for health insurance. So many of them didn't have to pay anything at all for health insurance.
Right. Now, was this up until the point that they were qualified for Medicare?
Well, even before, because many retired before.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Up until the point that they would qualify for Medicare?
Oh, no, even after that.
Even after that.
Yeah.
But this was something that was part of their compensation package negotiated.
Well, yes, it was an ERISA plan. That's an Employee Retirement Income Security Act. It was a plan. Actually, it came out of the collective bargaining by the union employees there, and then the non-union employees, the management employees, thought this looked like a pretty good deal, and management agreed, and so that's how they got it.
Right. All right, Dixon. They tried to get out of this, and this, of course, has been tried before. You took them to court.
We did.
Oh, hey, let me turn on your microphone there. There you go.
All right, we did. It was a claim that we brought, two parts. The first part was that, look, these folks had a contract, a deal in place where they had agreed that if they didn't use their sick leave, it could be converted and they could use it later. We call that deferred compensation. The second part was that they, as part of their compensation package, they weren't allowed to own stock basis of how CUNA is set up. So if you had worked for CUNA for long enough, for a number of years, you accrued an additional benefit, which is that CUNA agreed to pay an additional part of your health insurance. And once they cut that off, we brought suit in the Western District of Wisconsin.
And Barbara Crabb ruled against you.
Yes, she did.
That's unfortunate. And on what grounds did she rule against you?
Well, she ruled against us. The contract had a reservation of rights, which said that they were entitled to amend the agreement to pay for sick leave. However, it also said that any amendment had to accrue to the exclusive benefit of the retirees, the plan participants, and those two terms were obviously in conflict, and she basically ruled that the reservation of rights trumped the exclusive benefit provision, and so even though it was clear to most retirees that that they would have these rights.
Yeah, because I've got the Human Resources Memorandum right here.
Yes.
Where they checked off the box, except.
Yes. And it also says they can use their accrued sick leave until it is exhausted, which means it's pretty clear.
All right.
There's another point that each paycheck, they would see how much they were accruing. There's a little box up in the corner that said, you've been here 10 years now, you have $43,000 in accrued sick leave.
So you appealed Judge Crabb's decision?
Yes.
All right.
And we are awaiting the result. We appealed it to the Seventh Circuit, and it was a very, very lively oral argument.
Now, who's the judge in the Seventh Circuit?
Well, there are three of them. There is Judge Easterbrook, who has been on the court for a long time. He was a Reagan appointee.
Uh-oh.
And very, very brilliant judge, very conservative. A second judge was Judge David Hamilton, an Obama appointee. and also a very bright judge. The third one is Judge Mannion, also bright, who is also a Reagan appointee, but he's been on the court a long time, and his decisions, it's hard to predict how he will go.
How he's going to roll. Well, and of course, and Judge Crabb was a Carter appointee.
Of course.
So you never know how these things are going to shake down. And, put the human face on this. Jim and Dixon are both with us from Lawton and Cates. By the way, what's your phone number at Lawton and Cates if people are interested in hiring you?
Sure, 282-6200.
Okay.
You can also reach us on the web at www.lawtoncates.com.
All right. In human terms, how's this affected people's lives at CUNA? Because I assume that, they're still enforcing this.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, the retirees had to go out on their own, after they have retired on fixed incomes and try to get health insurance. And, many of them, they could have, when they retired, they could have gone maybe on their wife's health insurance plan. Or they worked, they stayed at CUNA for, the last 5-10 years because they knew they were accruing these benefits.
What did CUNA tell these people when they reneged on something that they'd promised to do?
That they had the right to do it under their contract, that they were sorry, that obviously they were, they had losses. They had some bad investments that year.
Oh.
And that's what they had to do to keep the company alive.
The culture of this company has changed a great deal over the last 10 years, and they've brought in people to attempt to bust unions, and they've gotten rid of a lot of people, and they've significantly cut back on benefits. CUNA used to be the premier place to work in town.
Absolutely, and Bob Curry, the president, was a wonderful human being. And he, the people out there would say he'd walk down the hallways, he'd say, "Hello, how's your wife?" He'd know the kids, and he was the one that really put this plan in.
But we have a different culture now.
Yes.
Yeah. So, are there many companies that even offer these plans anymore?
Well, I think that there are a lot of companies that the state. Still has,
for now.
and there are. I'm sure there are many others that do, and you have to look. We think we have a very strong case to have this overturned.
Were you shocked when Judge Crabb read the decision, or when you saw the decision Judge Crabb had put out?
To some extent, yes, because we felt that our argument as to that it should be amended for the exclusive benefit of the plan participant was a very strong argument. But in the legal culture over the last several years, the feeling is these ERISA cases, the employee normally loses.
How much, there was a huge case with Pabst and their pensions with their employees, and the fact is that they reneged on paying pensions, but there was a bankruptcy involved there, right? Or
right.
Pabst ceased to exist in its current form, even though another brewer has purchased them. Just because CUNA has losses, they never made the claim. They didn't have the money to cover these costs, did they?
No, and they didn't just suspend them for a year. Now they're doing much better, but they're still not paying the retirees health insurance benefits.
Dixon, do we have a total on how much money they're saving themselves by not honoring this?
What CUNA indicated in one of its year-end statements was that it was $100 million that they could take off the liability and accrue to CUNA's benefit.
$100 million?
Yes.
So, and how many people does this affect? We have a total on that?
Well, I'm thinking maybe 1,000 or so.
So $100 million for 1,000, that's a pretty significant chunk of change per person, doesn't it?
Well, that is extended out over 30 years.
Over a period of time, but still, that's a...
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I would say that probably it cost the employees about $13,000 to $15,000 a year for their premiums that they lost. Some even more.
13, and these are people that retired and maybe wouldn't have retired when they did had they known this was going to happen.
No, yeah, that's correct. Or would have had some other way of taking care of their health insurance.
Or would have gone to a different company in the last 10 years when they were the most marketable.
How quickly were there warnings they were going to do this? How quickly did they drop this bomb on their employees?
Well, they dropped it about 2 weeks before the end of the year, but they did agree that they would extend it for, they would pay them for 2 more years. They worked out some payment for their health insurance for 2 years, but they gave them 2 weeks' notice, really. They said they could stay on their plan, but they'd had to pay it themselves.
How long had most of these people worked for CUNA?
Oh, gosh. Many of them over 30 years.
So they had a compact with the company for over 30 years.
Oh, yes.
And they retired, and they...
And these were many of the senior management people who had helped build the company into the great company it was.
And when do you expect this decision?
It could come...
Today?
Well, today, yes. We're looking at it every day.
And if you don't get the decision that you want in the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, you go higher?
There's a possibility that we will. It depends on what it says.
Right.
Appealing to the Supreme Court is always kind of a crapshoot, but we'd have to see what we
Well, I was going to say in this Supreme
1 in 1,000.
Yeah.
Have you ever practiced before the Supreme Court, Jim?
I haven't actually argued before the Supreme Court. We just had a case before the Supreme Court where we didn't want them to take it, and they didn't. So I wrote, somebody in the Supreme Court has looked at words I've written.
Well, here's and Dixon, just some tips. What you need to do is watch Shirley Phelps, Fred Phelps' daughter, practice before the court, because she got an 8-1 decision in her favor last week.
I saw part of that.
Yeah, so
I hope to never practice like that.
so, maybe you can take some tips from Shirley Phelps.
Okay,
how to practice in front of the Supreme. It's one of the most remarkable things. Although I probably tend to agree with the court's decision, not for the reasons Shirley Phelps argued. So, well, I hope you prevail in this case, because you have to think that this decision will certainly set precedent on whether other companies try to pull this, right?
Obviously it will.
Yeah. All right. Dixon, Jim, thank you for joining us. Lawton and Cates. Phone number one more time.
282-6200.
And your website?
www.lawtoncates.com.